Welcome back to World Talks with me, Anna Kalczyńska. President Ursula von der Leyen, together with President Antonio Costa, will attend the EU South Africa Summit in Cape Town today, the first summit since 2018. The summit is an opportunity to reaffirm Europe's continent commitment with South Africa and raising global tensions. While Russia remains a potent player in parts of Africa, recent events in the Sahelian states have shown that Russia's forces are deeply overstretched and are losing credibility, which creates a diplomatic opening for the West. To discuss this topic, we are joined today by Ambassador Jan Wieliński, long-term Polish ambassador to African countries. He performed duties at Polish diplomatic missions in Kenya, Liberia, Nigeria, and ambassador headed the Polish embassy in Zimbabwe, covering Zambia and Malawi with competence, and participated in the UN mission in Namibia. Good morning, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Madam Editor, good morning, viewers.
So do you see any signs that African nations will begin distancing themselves from Russia? And is there a place for EU to step in?
It's sorry to say, but I do not see. You know, the Russian propaganda is influencing many African countries, and opinion that Ukrainian war is not their problem is now prevailing in Africa. Only a few countries in Africa are supporting Ukrainian in their struggle against Russian invasion. So the position of European Union, which will explain to South Africa why this war is going and who is attacking which country, is very important. And I am happy to note that this summit is taking place in South Africa. Why? Because South Africa is global partner, and many African countries are looking for a position of South Africa and are trying to follow the same position in international relations.
Well, it's easier said than done, because Russia has been struggling by developing its force in Africa, while France, for instance, has seen some decreasing power in Africa. So what countries do you see as potent and able partners for South Africa?
The countries which are at the south and who are members of SADC community, like Namibia, like Swazi, Mozambique, you know, they are also under influence of Russian propaganda, but looking upon the South Africa, they are trying to moderate their position. So I think for us it's very important to convince President Cyril Ramaphosa, despite the fact that South Africa is a BRIC member, you know, so group which is under the heavy influence of Russia, that the war in Europe has also the consequences for Africa. Why? Because the help for Africa is cut due to the spending for a military intervention in Ukraine.
Exactly. So Europe is rearming itself. It's spending a lot of money here on the continent. How can it be matched with money spent in Africa? Still,
European Union is providing a lot of money, especially for South Africa. For the last year, it was about 124 million euros, which were provided for South Africa in a form of different grants to help to reconstruct and reform the economy. Additionally, the business trade between European Union and South Africa is about 50 billion euros. So it's also helping. Okay, the European Union has a privileged position compared with Americans, for example, because our goods have very low tariff or go into South Africa without tariffs. But also South Africa is benefiting because we have a lot of South African wine in European Union. So it is not one-way traffic. It goes into both sides.
Let's discuss the Russia's presence in Africa. How has it evolved since the deployment of Wagner mercenaries in 2018?
It's very heavy and it is spreading. You know, I forecast that influence can be higher. Why? Because United States has cut the USA aid to Africa and created a vacuum which I am sure will be implemented by Russians. Although
or Chinese, for that
Chinese
matter.
Economically, but Russians economically and military. We do not have Chinese troops in Africa, but we have Wagner groups and additionally Russian troops in many African countries. Additionally, recently, for example, Burkina Faso decided to drop French as the official language. You know, in Mali, we have a lot of problems. Even the population is suffering. Why? Because they are killing innocent people, grabbing wealth of the country, but it's difficult to fulfill the vacuum. So right now, they are supporting certain regimes, and the situation for Europe is really very difficult.
But despite its effort to enhance its presence in Africa and its influence, Russia is still struggling, right, to establish itself as a long-term strategic partner in Africa. So which countries in Europe have the potential to step in?
Former colonies like France, Spain, Great Britain, who is not a European Union member, but still has the influence. Additionally, you know, in Africa, in every country you have a few languages. So the country needs to have one language which all the people can communicate. And English and French play such an important role. The same applies to the Spanish language. And through the language, culture, and especially through the help, financial, technical help, we can influence those countries and keep them under our umbrella.
How about the recent strategic defeat of Russia in Syria, for instance? Does it play a role in a leverage that Europe can somehow take advantage of? So can this lower down the trust among Russian and African partners?
Yes, and it is already happening. You know, for example, in Mali, Ukrainians are helping Tuareg. They have attacked the Wagner mercenaries, and according to the report, about 80 mercenaries were killed and some were, you know, wounded. So there is a position, you know, to go against the Russians and especially to expose their tactics. Mm-hmm. For example, to show that if they are in a country, they are grabbing the mineral resources, killing people, raping innocent women, so their presence is counterproductive to the interest of those countries.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much. We will be watching closely this summit, EU summit in Africa is just taking place today, so we will certainly have also opportunity to discuss it further.
Thank you. It's a very important event. And I will also follow the resolution and final communique of the summit, which I hope will be published by this evening.
Ambassador Jan Wieliński has been our guest this morning here on World Talks. Thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for watching. Stay tuned to TVP World for more features.